Itzel Miganda Chavez is 25, born the same year Prop 187 was passed. She's a DACA recipient from Mexico. To her, Proposition 187 is the world she entered, one where the lives of undocumented people has hung in the political balance.
I think there's remnants of it growing up undocumented in the border region because, I grew up fearing police. And if my mom was driving us to school, whatever, to the grocery store, I remember feeling significant fear if a police officer was behind us.
For Christian Ramirez, his political awakening took place during the fight over 187, when he was a freshman at San Diego State University. Growing up with family on both sides of the border in San Diego and Tijuana, he was shocked when 187 passed with a 2/3 majority.
I lived in a bubble. I thought that, my gosh, there's no way that this proposition is going to pass.
Ramirez, who now works for the labor union SEIU, is part of the generation that turned their shock into power. They sprang into action in the years following 187's passage to usher in California's DREAM Act, which gave undocumented students access to college. California also provided undocumented people with driver's licenses and severely limited the ways in which law enforcement could interact with immigration and customs enforcement. He says his generation found out that it had to build a larger movement to overcome the resentment of the immigrant community.
We learned that in order for us to be able to win, we had to have a strategy that allowed us to build broad coalitions and to employ every single means available to us to push for the kind of change that we are beginning to see in California now.
Chavez gives an example of those new coalitions.
Sitting in a room of a community of 10 folks from the immigrant community and 10 folks from the LGBTQ community and having conversations about coming out and how that kind of story was very similar in different ways, right? But in a sense, as an undocumented person, having to come out and tell friends or folks that you come across that you are in a different immigration status was similar to the experiences of LGBTQ community coming out to their families and friends.
For Chavez, the Obama-era executive order that allowed her to live and work in the U.S. pushed her into activism. She now works as an organizer for the group Alliance San Diego in the hope that an organized community could avoid another Proposition 187 moment. At the same time, the Trump administration has folded some of Prop 187 into national policy.
I do think that if we want to get systematic change, right? It's not about who's in office. It's about, again, changing those structures that allowed politicians to make the moves that they're making.
Andrea Tecpoyo Tepale is another DACA recipient, and she's still a student at USD. She got to go to college thanks to California's DREAM Act. She didn't learn about Proposition 187 until she was a freshman in college, showing just how far this moment has receded in popular memory.
I didn't learn about it. I didn't realize or learn about Prop 187 until a couple of years ago, and I think that was the most shocking thing to me, was the fact that so many things had happened right here in this border and that I didn't even get to learn about.
Still, she's fighting essentially the same battle as the students who kicked off protests 25 years ago. Next week, the Supreme Court will hear arguments over the Trump administration's cancellation of the DACA program.
And when DACA was rescinded in 2017 on September 5th, I think that I had the normal reactions that any undocumented student would have, fear, anger, and I think that I was really frustrated and upset and sad, but my way of thinking was either I can continue to be sad and frustrated or I can try and do something about it.
On Tuesday, Andrea will be leading campus protests against the cancellation of DACA, renewing a long tradition of activism that has achieved huge gains for immigrants in California in the 25 years since Proposition 187. At the same time, for many undocumented immigrants across the country, today is looking a lot like 1994. Max Rivlin-Nadler, KPBS News.